That I'm joined by Inna Shevchenko. She's a feminist and the leader of the Femin movement, which is known for organising controversial topless protests against women's rights abuses. Thank you for being with us on France 24 tonight. Now, you've written a pretty fiery response to this letter. It is fair to say, isn't it, that you disagree with what Catherine Deneuve and these other French women are saying?
Surely, of course. I must say that first, when I saw the title of such tribune and the names of those successful, intelligent women who signed under those titles, I actually honestly thought that that was rather a comic sketch. But as I was going through the lines and was reading very carefully the article, of course, my disagreement and I would honestly say outrage was growing. And therefore, of course, I wrote my response as well as many other feminists because I think that this text, actually, I will recognize that this text points some very important issues on which we can have debates, such as victimization of women who suffered from sexual abuse and rape, and so on and so forth. We can have debates about it. However, this statement also made a very dangerous declarations, portraying and minimizing the contribution of Me Too movement and the work of Me Too movement, minimizing completely the testimonies of those women who have suffered horrible experiences such as rape and sexual abuse, because in this tribune it's actually said that basically all those sexual abuses are something about touching a knee of a woman
or stealing a kiss.
So I think that there are a lot of things that should be denounced.
Yes,
yeah,
but
exactly.
But they say, but Inna, they say at the beginning, don't they? They say at the beginning though that they are making it clear that rape is a crime and they are not defending that in any way. And they go on to say that they are trying to kind of draw the distinction between clumsy flirting, as they call it, you know, when a man tries to court or woo a woman, as they used to call it, and, you know, a real abuse of power like we saw in the case of Harvey Weinstein. There is a difference, isn't there? Is there a risk that it is all getting bundled up together?
Look, I think that there is certainly a difference, and everybody was always drawing this difference. And the women who shared their painful testimonies were not testifying about someone touching their knee or kissing them in the cheek, right? I think that what is actually I should ask myself, I was asking myself while reading particularly those sentences that you just mentioned, that you just quoted, I was asking myself, what do they call a clumsy or intensive flirting? Was Harvey Weinstein's aggressions towards women intensive or clumsy flirting? Or, for example, Roman Polanski sex with 13-year-old child, was that clumsy flirting? What exactly do they define as clumsy or intensive flirting?
Well, Roman Polanski's
there are even more questions arising as...
Sorry to interrupt you. Roman Polanski is an interesting case, isn't it? Because we just saw the movement in Hollywood, the black dress, Golden Globes evening. A lot of those actresses have stood up for Roman Polanski. He seems to be the exception for a lot of people who do support this movement.
Well, you know, I think that we can have various positions on specific different cases, and you know, I think in particular it's very difficult to be to judge objectively when you're part of the very same industry and you work with those directors, and basically for years you were acting in the movies. And I will mention that Catherine Deneuve also supported and defended Polanski in particular as well. But I think that we should go beyond discussing one specific case, because it has been denounced in numerous situations of sexual aggressions, in particular in cinema industry. And it is very painful to see women like Catherine Deneuve and others calling this denunciation and all the testimonies that came up from silence breakers in 2017 as a sign of a new puritanism. I want to say that there is nothing puritanistic about denouncing rapists and criminals, sexual aggressors. There is nothing puritanistic about a belief that you may determine on your own your sexual behavior without coercion.
Yeah.
And probably I will be the last person who will be described as a puritanistic, I think, in the feminine movement, as well as we challenge a lot of
but just briefly, those
statements are.
Yeah, just briefly, I'm sorry, but because we are running out of time, but just briefly, I just want to pick up another point they made, that there is a risk that this is kind of patronising to women, treating them as children with faces and kind of making out that women are these, innocent creatures that need to be protected, and that is quite dangerous, and all men are predatory. Is there a danger there, or do you not agree with that either?
Well, I think that this Tribune actually described all men as a crazy wild hunters who are able to flirt and seduce women only in aggressive ways. And I think that actually this Tribune is on the same level against victims as well as really against many men, because they describe all men as a homogeneous group of wild hunters, But I think that the point about victimization is actually very interesting to discuss. But the answer that they provide, this masochistic attitude, is neither a good response. So this is very important to consider, and I think that they miss a very important point. They miss a very important point that Me Too movement is not only denouncing aggressors and making victims' voices heard, but Me Too movement is also about arguing that women have a very equal right to seek for joy and pleasure from flirting and from sexual relationship. And this is a very important point that these women unfortunately miss.
Inna Shevchenko, thank you very much indeed.